All right, I'm just going to say this right off the top here. This is going to be a messy episode, but so is the multiverse. So let's get strange. Hello, I'm J-Law, but you can call me Justin. And yes, we've seen Marvel Studios' Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and we're bringing you our spoiler-free, and I accentuate spoiler-free reaction to this movie. Joining me today, you know them, I know them. Kevin Hudson, Nate Shelton. How are you, boys?
Strange things are happening to me. That was a different multiversal move. Randy Newman's not in this one. Okay.
He could be. He could have written this score to probably some multiverse world. Who
sure.
knows? Who knows?
In some universities. Yeah.
Before we get into our discussion here, I just wanted to take a second here to say thanks to Disney Canada for inviting us out to tonight's event, which it definitely felt like an event.
It's a nice nighttime screener. Usually it's in the morning for us, right?
Yeah, for sure. But we got an opportunity to see the first footage of Avatar: The Way of Water. Of course, Nate, you stayed there and watched it like a bajillion times.
At least 19
because they had it on loop. It was it was interesting. So it was a nice little sort of prelude, getting us hyped. Obviously seeing that footage and then going into this movie. But this was tons of fun. We're not going to give our reaction to that footage on this episode. We're going to save that for a future This Week in Geek. But we did pop out some reaction tweets, so they'll be on our main Twitter at Geekcentric YT. You can go check those out just to see our first thoughts. So yes, a huge thanks to Disney Canada for inviting us. But yes, let's get into this. I'd love to just kick things off with first initial thoughts, your reaction. Nate, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, man. I think much like this podcast, I loved the pacing in the movie. Wastes no time and just gets right into the action. This movie's a lot of fun. And I know we kind of say that after, I'm pretty sure that's we said it 19 times during our Spider-Man review as well. So much fun, but this movie for comic book fans, it's incredibly, it's such a fun ride. And for Sam Raimi fans too, this is a Sam Raimi movie.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
And there's so much in it that I think for different people who enjoy the MCU, but also the horror genre and everything that Sam Raimi has given us in the past, you're gonna love this freaking movie, dude. I don't know. So much fun.
Yeah. Kev, how about yourself?
Well, I know this for sure. Oh, sorry. That's from the Avatar trailer we saw 2,000 times. Wrong movie I'm focusing on here. I gotta say, I guess I'll probably be the Debbie Downer here. I was really let down by this movie. It just didn't feel up to the standards of some of the big Marvel movies that we've seen, that we've gotten recently. It might even be my least favorite of the Marvel movies of Phase 4.
Whoa.
Just because of how excited I was going in and how much I was let down. I'm not sure it was the worst of the Phase 4 by any means, but it was the one I was most disappointed and let down by. And it was for a lot of the reasons you mentioned, Nate. It's for the very reasons that you think it stood out. Those let me down. It was a bit almost, I don't know, it was too Sam Raimi maybe. I think they needed to rein him in and control him. And I'm a big writing guy, and the writing, I don't know. We'll get into it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I feel like, again, I'm always in the middle of you.
You're the
two.
cream, dude.
Understand.
You're the nice creamy
I
center,
guess
bro.
so. That's weird. Okay. Anyways, I'm kind of mixed on this movie. On so many levels, this movie delivered on certain expectations I had. Again, Nate, you referenced it with Sam Raimi helming this movie with the horror elements and just getting weird with Doctor Strange. Because I feel like even for the first Doctor Strange, you guys both know I wasn't a fan of the first Doctor Strange because it just felt so typical in its structure. And here there was a little bit more liberty and freedom and just getting, again, weird. That's going to be a word that I'm going to use a lot. Just getting weird with it. And
getting strange.
I kind of dug that. And this movie is just such a celebration of Sam Raimi's aesthetic. But when the comedy elements start to kind of appear and just some of that Sam Raimi camp that we've talked about in other reviews, I think that's where it tonally just feels off balance and it just doesn't jive. But there's moments in this movie where you're watching it and you look at some of these visuals that Sam Raimi has put together, and then you hear the score of Danny Elfman, and it feels so nostalgic, and it just feels like its own style of filmmaking in the MCU.
You mentioned Danny Elfman. The music, the soundtrack in this movie is dope, and I think for fans of Danny Elfman music, much as much as we're talking about Sam Raimi, if you enjoy Danny Elfman's music, you'll love the soundtrack in this movie. He pulls stuff in from across the MCU and beyond, and it's really exciting. And it's just one of those things where, like, the way that music is even used to a certain degree in this movie is just really unique and really interesting, and it's just a good pairing when you put these two together and you get a Danny Elfman scored Raimi movie. It just works for me from a superhero standpoint. And again, it just plays into that aspect of fun. Like the moment the score starts to pick up, you're like, oh, this is getting a little, for some people, it's going to be a little too whimsical. It's going to be a little too sort of, it doesn't take itself too seriously, I think, where some people might want it to, and you can say that about
that's a good call
the
out.
Overall movie itself. But yeah, man, I think it's a great score, and
but just touching on what you said there, I think that's a really great call out to say that, like, that campiness, that comedy that I think is very inherent to Sam Raimi, that he kind of like, creeps into his movies, as we know, that can take you out of these movies and the movies taking themselves seriously. And given the circumstances of what's going on, I think audiences are going to be expecting that this story should be taking itself seriously.
That would certainly be something that bothered me a little bit about it. There's a lot at stake here, and it doesn't feel like there is at a lot of times, and that was just a weird tone to have for a lot of the movie. I will say, while I had some problems with certain acting decisions, I think Cumberbatch brought it in terms of portraying different sort of versions of himself. But Sochiel was definitely a standout here. I think she made a great debut and a great splash into sort of announcing herself to the world and to the MCU, even if their handling of her was a bit kiddish at times. That's kind of where they lost me a little bit, but I think she brought a great burst of energy to the project.
I loved Xochitl Gomez as America Chavez. I think she was fantastic. I think she was a little underutilized, though.
Yeah.
In some cases, I think her character was a little one note.
She disappears for big chunks of the movie.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. But I also think that there's more for her character, obviously, to be explored through the MCU as we expand. So I'm okay with it. But at the same time, I don't know if it was as much as I was anticipating. I thought she was going to be a little bit more.
I think that can be said about a lot of the supporting cast in the movie as well. Like whenever Benedict Wong on screen with Stephen Strange, like every time they were together, I love their interactions, and we do get that. I would have loved to have seen it a little more, and I always bring up the idea of more, that I'm always like, I wanted more, but I did for a lot of the supporting cast and and I get that it's a Doctor Strange movie, don't get me wrong, but for an adventure involving these characters, it just felt like there is, when we talk about sort of again, without going into spoilers, but there are a lot of moments where they do have to break apart and they do have to go in separate directions.
Yeah,
and when you do an adventure movie like this, that's hard to pull off. You know what I mean? And
sure.
I don't know if they fully.
It's the Empire Strikes Back, divide
right.
and conquer. But again, to Kevin's point, by removing her from the storyline, she just felt absent at times and just underutilized. I think definitely integral.
Also, Elizabeth Olsen is I'll say she's powerful, she's ruthless, and that's about all that I can say about her and her performance in terms of, obviously, without not wanting to go into spoilers. She's definitely there's a certain aspect of heart to this movie, and she does bring that in. But overall, when we talk about one note, we do get that from her as well. And not necessarily in her performance, but in like the way that they wrote Wanda in this movie, definitely felt a little more one note as well.
Yeah, I mean, her motivations are never justified, really, and so yeah, it's really this didn't allow her to elevate to her acting abilities that she showed in WandaVision. I don't think she ever had enough to work with here to get to those levels that really made everyone go, wow, can she ever bring a powerful performance?
I feel like this was definitely the sequel to WandaVision, though. Yeah. The next evolution of her character. And I feel like where we find her here is very much the fallout of WandaVision and what happened at Westview. And that's why her character is this way.
Totally, but I just kind of wish that this series was closer than in release, right? Like, I feel like anyone who's just watched WandaVision, then going into this movie, you might sort of understand the pace at which her character, moves throughout the movie. But I feel like it when you're this far removed from that series, it does feel a little bit jarring near the beginning. I did want to talk about how scary this movie was, though.
Dude, the horror vibes hit.
Dude, it was scary, and like it was thrilling. There's jump scares in a Marvel movie, and I really dug that. Like that was some of the aspects of the when we're talking about it's a lot of Sam Raimi stuff. I really loved how he brought that into the movie.
It was almost handled in a way that felt inherently Sam Raimi, but also just the right amount for the MCU. You know what I mean? We've talked about this with Moon Knight and how it sort of interjects some of those elements where it doesn't push so far into that, but it sort of trickles in. Here we get, again, I think a little bit more of that, but it does kind of paint a picture of what horror could look like in the MCU that is, still friendly to all audiences, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that they kept it friendly for audiences, but then there are other moments where this movie is dark and it is violent and gory, and it just feels like I wish they had hearkened in more on that, utilizing Sam Raimi's past more than the campy stuff. I think they balanced it too unevenly with camp, and so again, there's none of these like impactful, gory, scary moments really resonate too long because they're almost always followed up by something a bit cheesy, a bit hokey.
Lighter. Yeah, it throws it. It doesn't let it sit. But like there are some moments though that are just like they're fun in the instance, in the moment of when you're doing it. But to your point, Kevin, there isn't really time to let those moments sit. It just feels like we're in it and then we're out of it really quick.
It's okay. And Justin, we've been talking in our watch club about, I think even just last week, like the differences between Marvel Comics and the MCU and how they tend to borrow things from the comics, but then ground them. And then sometimes that subdues them as well. And this movie holds nothing back in that sense. And I think that's going to be really interesting for general audiences because I feel like we've been pretty middle of the road for most Marvel projects. But like, I almost see like where some people would watch Eternals and feel like, it was such a departure because it took itself way too seriously. This movie almost skews a little too far in the opposite direction where, it's kind of like, this is so much like a comic book, and getting more and more into the Marvel comic books in so many ways. I'm watching this movie and I'm just like, wow, that sounded like dialogue from a comic book. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. It just depends on if you are a fan of that kind of dialogue. And I think it's going to be a bit jarring for audiences who are used to the MCU and not necessarily from the comic books. I think it's going to be a bit jarring for them to get into and to vibe with, apart from the cheesy Sam Raimi stuff. Because again, I think there is some of that too.
Yeah, the writing, especially the dialogue, is really where I felt the most let down. I mean, especially when we got what we did from Michael Waldron with Loki, which is one of the best written Marvel or Disney Plus shows so far. I'll just say, Aluma Wuddy. I mean, that's the kind of jokes and smart cracks we're getting in this movie. It was just really just flat and it wasn't clever enough. It wasn't up to Marvel's. I think you could see Raimi poking through with some of those moments throughout it. And I mean, with Marvel getting so deep into how many movies they're making now and how deep into the MCU we are, it is important to find new directors with new voices and new styles, so it doesn't all just feel like the same movie, but a little different as we go along here.
Right.
And, you saw that with Eternals and Chloe Zhao, and while I think that one almost was too pretentious to feel naturally at home in the MCU, this one, like you said, Nate, was the opposite way. It was too far. It was too Batman and Robin. It was too, just like a Schumacher camp versus something that felt like it's like, look at how silly and fun Thor Ragnarok is, but it never felt cheesy. And this did for me.
I think to Kevin's point, we are dealing with something that is as big of a threat to every universe as the Eternals was. And so I can totally understand that. I think just coming at it from the standpoint of like, even in the I think in your interview that you did with Raimi and Waldron, like they referenced the fact that they did go deep into the comics and they did look into that stuff. And just as I was sort of watching this movie, I just couldn't stop thinking about the comic books and just how at times there's moments where it feels silly, even if they are working with big things.
Yeah, even just the opening, the speed at which these things, we kind of get kicked off into this whole story. It feels like the opening pages of a comic book. Like you're 100%. Opening it and you're just seeing this event happening. You're in it, right? So, and that felt nice, right? There was no necessary over-the-top exposition. Now, that being said, exposition is in some cases, in this instance, very force-fed, right? Because it needed to get some information to the viewers immediately. You bring up a really great point, Kevin, when you mention, Waldron's ability to write a series versus, 2-hour movie. I'm wondering if that's just always going to be the constant difference between these shows and movies, is just how we're experiencing this information, right? Again, we always say Eternals could have been a better series than it was a movie.
I just think that when it comes to the camp and the aspects of this movie, that like there's a lot of narrative decisions that are made that you kind of sit there and over and over again, I was kind of thinking like, oh, I mean that's an easy way to you just say, okay, this is how this works. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. Like they because they're dealing with the multiverse, there are a lot of times where, in my mind, I was giving them a pass for it, and I was just saying, yeah, okay. But it did happen over and over and over again, where there were moments where I was just like, oh, okay, I guess that's how that works. Oh, and that's how that works. Okay, all right. And I could see that not, again, if you are coming at it from a standpoint of like not just reading some goofy comics about a wizard, like. It can start to feel like that. So again, I think there are aspects of it that just skew in a completely different direction. And then there's also going to be people that just don't jive with Sam Raimi's filmmaking that might not enjoy this movie. But again,
he's not for everyone, that's for sure. And like his style is something that I think some appreciate for him being the sort of auteur that he is, with his own visual style and what he likes to implement in his filmmaking, and they'll appreciate that. And I think that very much this movie has a lot of those elements, whether it be the good and the bad. Well, I didn't lie at the top of the show. This was messy, so there you go. You have our what worked and what didn't work of this movie, and I think we've gabbed on enough before we get into talking about anything we shouldn't be talking about. I think it's an appropriate time to move into our final thoughts and score, which will be out of 5 multiverses. Kev, do you want to kick things off here?
Yeah, absolutely. You were just sort of talking about Sam Raimi and his style, and I think we've seen both ends of the spectrum with Sam Raimi and a comic book movie. You know, in the press conference, they called him the godfather of modern superhero movies. And unfortunately, I think this went to Spider-Man 3 and not enough Spider-Man 2. And I think I kind of would have preferred the movie to take itself a little bit, again, not too seriously here, because you can go too far, like the Eternals. But it felt a bit soft, nothing seemed to really have any consequences. And instead of this being a story of progressing the characters that it involved to a next level, it just sort of felt like a day in the life, just something that happens to them versus something that changes their futures going forward. And so it just all felt a bit hollow. And again, I don't want to harp too bad on the writing, but it didn't come off truly MCU authentic. It just almost felt like an MCU knockoff or something. I don't know quite what it is. And I definitely think, I wonder if watching it for a second time will change my perspective on that. But I've seen the first 20 minutes now twice, and I felt the exact same way today watching those first 20 minutes as I did, earlier in the week. And it was just like, I don't know if this just fits into the MCU quite as organically as I think I would have liked, especially because of where it takes place in our timeline and with everything that's just happened. You know, we really are bringing a lot of these stories together into one, and I just wish it felt a bit more true to those source materials that it's coming from. So, yeah, again, I just think this is the most disappointed I've been in a Marvel movie in a while. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the one I've liked the least. It's just my letdown from my really, really sky-high expectations certainly weren't met. And so, with that said, I'm going to give this a 3.3 out of 5 multiverses.
Nate, how about yourself?
Yeah, I don't know why, but I just keep smiling at the different moments that they gave us in this movie, and just moments that they gave us, and just the decisions that they made around them. I smile, I giggle, I feel that same feeling that you get when you just have those fist pumping moments. But I really do understand the other sides of it as well. For again, as I said, a lot of people that are used to the MCU the way that it is, this is gonna, just like Eternals, this is going to be, might be a bit too different for them. But I do think that, Kevin, you mentioned the source material. This movie, 100% comic book fans are going to, I think, really, really dig this movie, and it's going to give them a narrative that is very close, for good and for bad, to a Doctor Strange comic book. I love that we got scariness, we got horror, we got violence in this movie, and I hope that we can retain some of that going forward. But as you said, Kevin, I think the other aspect of like the day in the life thing, I get that too, because again, you go into these movies, especially something that's dealing with the multiverse, and you expect it to be bigger than I think what we kind of got. So with all that said, I still really enjoyed it. I still had a blast. I still had a ton of fun. My watch told me that I got a heart rate notification during this movie. So, I think if you are a fan of comic books and that style, you're going to love it. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 multiverses.
Yeah. I think I'm still where I was at when we started this conversation. I'm a bit mixed. You guys both brought up points that I definitely connect with. I think the movie leans into the weird and leans into the horror, and really does have Sam Raimi's touch all over this movie. And I think that the horror elements that we got, I really enjoyed. I think they that's what I was looking for more of. And they were balanced in a way that felt appropriate to MCU, and it just kind of showed us what horror could look like in the MCU. But with that, I totally agree. I think the camp and the humor that is very inherently Sam Raimi, while I appreciate it, I think sometimes threw the whole tone of this movie off, and I think that does come back down to the runtime. of the 2 hours and 6 minutes. I do enjoy that they don't waste any time, but I also think that there's no sitting with things. And some interesting visual effects choices that I will say that made me question, the legitimacy of some of the graphics at times. Some interesting battles as well that were kind of a little eyebrow raising. And at the end of the day, I know that this movie's on the shoulders of everything MCU, but especially like No Way Home.
Yeah.
With the sort of level of fan service that it delivered on. This is a full MCU proper film, not a shared story with Sony. So this is their ability to really kind of open up the door of the multiverse in their universe and really talk about how they're going to be introducing that. And I believe it was Kevin who said like that threat didn't really feel like that much of a threat by the end of it. And it still felt like a seed rather than something that really just kind of really kicked the door open to kind of introduce things. So, fan service is great, but if you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, and it's not really there to help service the story, then it just feels like it's just there for the sake of it. That being said, there's a lot more pluses for me, so I think I'm going to probably skew to a 4 out of 5 multiverses. So that's it. That is our spoiler-free review and reaction to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We got through it, guys. We didn't blow anything. We didn't have those moments where like, oh, is that too much of a spoiler? Did I lean too hard?
I mean, it's so hard to talk about this movie without spoilers.
Stop it.
Right?
Stop it. Yeah.
There it is. Bing, 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 bing. Bingo.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, feel free to subscribe and feel free to leave us a review from whatever multiverse you're at. We always appreciate the love. And hey, maybe when you check out Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and you want to let us know what you think, well, you can reach out to us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com, or on Twitter at geekcentricyt, or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric. Now, we're not done talking about this movie because we will be dropping a spoiler-filled discussion with our Marvel comic expert, Darcy Hudson. Kevin won't be able to join us because he'll be in Florida, so we don't feel entirely bad for him. But also, just yesterday, we dropped our special Behind the Geeks episode where we got to sit down with writer Michael Waldron and director Sam Raimi to discuss a little bit more about putting this movie together, and we had a good time. So you'll definitely want to go take a listen to that. Also, keeping in the theme of Marvel, later this week, we are wrapping up our ongoing watch club with our final episode for Marvel Studios' Moon Knight. Guys, any last-minute hot takes?
I just want Steven to be okay. That's all. If they give me that, I'll be happy. I think it's going to happen, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, in terms of specifics, I'm really not sure what to expect, and I think that's an awesome thing. But I will just say, I hope that, it just seems like there's a lot of work to do in one episode, and I hope that they leave this character in a place where it's ready to go to a next story. It doesn't need to continue this one on, you know what I mean? Like, I'm ready to see a new adventure with the Moon Knight character and however many of his, passengers he brings along up top. But yeah, I just want to make sure, I really hope they can wrap this up to propel the character for,
to then move
I
his
still like
character
Nate's
on further,
prediction
yeah.
of Blade. I'm still hoping that's when we get him back.
I gotta say, the more and more I think about it, there's a reason why we haven't seen Gore the God Butcher yet. And I think that the reason why is we may see him as an end credit stinger in this series. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm just going to say it would be really cool if that's how we get introduced to Gore the God Butcher, because we've now been introduced to gods. I think one of you guys were actually calling it last week. We've been introduced to gods. Who knows? Maybe this is how we get introduced to Gore the God Butcher, because he is slaying down some Egyptian gods, cleaning house, getting rid of them. Well,
I think that is the only way that they can, That's anything less, and I'll be severely disappointed.
I think it'll be Mephisto, actually. I changed my answer. Mephisto.
Yeah, okay.
It's going to be Mephisto. Okay, Justin.
Well, that's it for us. Until next time, Kev, Nate, thank you for joining me for this very messy, spoiler-free reaction review for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And, as we say,
love ya in any multiverse.
Get back to your multiverse safe, guys.
Multiversal peace.
We should have multiversal peace.